Overseas now, US intelligence officials say the Nord Stream gas pipeline could have been sabotaged by a vigilante group aligned with Ukraine. Joining us live now is Adam Entous, the investigative reporter at the New York Times. Anton, really appreciate you making the time and staying up late for us there. Thank you and congratulations. This is quite a scoop. Just take us through what US officials interviewed for your story have said regarding what actually happened to the Nord Stream pipeline.
Right. So basically, in September of last year, the pipeline, two of the pipelines are attacked with explosives, and there was a mystery. Who did it? There was a lot of finger pointing at that point. Russia pointed the finger at Britain. Poland and Ukraine point the finger at Russia, and frankly, there was sort of an absence of any intelligence that was solid about what happened. Recently, in recent weeks, what happened is we learned that there was new intelligence which was presented to American officials, which basically suggested it's not conclusive that a pro-Ukrainian group, one that supports Ukraine against Russia, was carried out this attack. The intelligence officials that we spoke to and the U.S. officials that we spoke to on this told us that at this point they don't have strong evidence or evidence that that the Ukrainian government or security services were directly involved in orchestrating this attack. Of course, as with all intelligence, as more information comes in, that picture could change. And according to the intelligence, basically this group of pro-Ukrainian fighters basically worked with experienced divers to plant the explosives on the pipelines that basically ruptured them last September.
Right, so this vigilante group, while not being sanctioned perhaps by the Ukrainian government, they're clearly pretty sophisticated in terms of being able to carry out that attack.
Yeah, I mean, there's we don't know a lot. We don't know the identities of these individuals. We were told that the U.S. officials believed that they were not actively working for military or intelligence services, but that doesn't mean that they didn't receive specialized training from government or intelligence services in the past. But I do think, though, that there has been this notion that this was super sophisticated and would require sort of James Bond-esque technology, and that's really not the case. The water is deep, but it's not so deep that divers couldn't do it. And frankly, on the idea of sophistication, really what was fascinating about this and what makes it a very difficult target for intelligence agencies to try to get to the bottom of it is the perpetrators really were very good at disguising their preparations and their activities. So they just didn't leave a lot of evidence for investigators to come back and find later. So that also lends to the argument that you just made, that this was at least somewhat sophisticated. But there is also other evidence that suggests it wasn't that sophisticated. Each of the pipelines that was attacked has two smaller lines, and so 3 of those lines were hit, but the 4th was not. And what we don't know is if that was because they the explosives didn't work, or they didn't have enough explosives, they didn't plan right, or if for some other reason it failed, or they intentionally did not hit that 4th pipe. And so, anyways, bottom line is that the picture is still pretty murky. But that this is sort of the beginning of us being able to understand what transpired.
So more broadly, what are you expecting the fallout of this revelation will be, particularly in terms of the impact that it could have on Germany's relations with Ukraine?
Yeah, I mean, depending on the outcome of this investigation and where the investigation eventually leads, it could have a profound impact on the ability of the United States to sort of keep the coalition together. And so, obviously, that's that tension is one that we have encountered in trying to report on this story. If the evidence here was pointing at Russia, it wouldn't, which a lot of people suspected initially. That would be much easier for U.S. officials to deal with that. But if this ends up pointing the finger at the Ukrainian government, that's a different story. And that will really potentially complicate things for the administration, for the Biden administration, to maintain this coalition, which is, frankly, the Russians are sort of counting on that coalition becoming exhausted and eventually, splintering. That hasn't happened yet. But over time, if it turns out this was something that the Ukrainians did, this could really set back that effort.
You mentioned there are still a few murky aspects of this story. Did the US officials you spoke with, did they give you an understanding of the nature of that intelligence, or just how watertight they are convinced that it is? And have we seen any response from the White House?
No, the White House is not commenting on this. They're referring questions to the investigators in Europe, which have taken the lead in this investigation. They haven't provided us with a lot of information about the officials that we spoke to about the nature of this intelligence. Is it based on what's known as signals intelligence, intercepted communications? Is it based on basically an assessment? What they were trying to do was look in the Baltic Sea where this event takes place to see if they can trace a vessel or vessels that were involved. Now, that proved to be incredibly difficult, in part because this is a very heavily trafficked area. And so when they look through the satellites and they look down in this area, they were seeing a lot of ships, right? A lot of ships that were moving in this area. There were approximately 45 what's known as ghost ships. These are ships that had their transponders that relay their location. Their transponders were not working, or they were off. Now, it's possible that some of the transponders were malfunctioning, and it's possible that the perpetrators had turned off the transponders in order not to be traced. And so we don't know exactly how the CIA and these other agencies are piecing this together, but undoubtedly what they're doing is going back to those 45 ghost ships and seeing if they can figure out where they disembarked, and then figuring out who was on them and trying to figure out from there, which one was the most likely candidate that was involved in this operation. So that's the kind of thing that they're doing, and they have been doing now for several months, to try to see if they can piece this together. The hard part is trying then to go from identifying that vessel and the individuals on that vessel to determining, how much were they controlled by the Ukrainian government, for example. If these people were acting in very professional ways in terms of disguising their communications, that can be a very difficult thing to prove. And what we don't know at this point is, the nature of their ability, the CIA and the other agencies that are investigating this, their ability to trace those individuals on the vessels back to the government and different parts of the government. Keep in mind, Ukraine is even though you have a president, you have these intel services, there always is the possibility of sort of rogue elements or loosely controlled elements, in addition to the possibility that government would, with a wink and a nod, encourage others to do this. So that's the kind of thing that they're trying to get to the bottom of now.